Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Martin O'Neill. During the September 11th COVID-19 press conference, Monroe County Health Administrator Patty Connell said the overall COVID-19 positivity rate was 8.2% at the end of the previous week. She also spoke about Indiana University's COVID test reporting.
Whatever the glitch was holding up those tests from IU, I want to say that it was not because they were not being reported, but it was, and I can't tell you exactly, but I feel very confident in the conversations that I have had with everyone. It has just been about systems talking to systems, and sometimes technology works wonderfully and sometimes it has challenges. And I think that this was a challenge, but there's an enormous amount of testing being done, we know, on IU campuses. And I think that that just presented a challenge. And so we will see those continue to kind of even out a little bit.
Cottle said local schools were working with the health department on plans to operate indoor sports. Indiana University Assistant Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, Kirk White, mentioned a local COVID-19 test lab would increase testing capacity.
Eventually, we'll get to an even higher number because we expect in November to stand up our own lab here in Bloomington that will allow us to process our own tests, and that will give us some additional capacity.
White said Indiana University is conducting a large number of COVID tests and that the test results dashboard would be updated on Wednesdays.
This will allow us to include more test results from the week prior, as these results take a few days to process. Remember, they're saliva tests, and the saliva tests are then sent to a lab out of state. It takes a couple of days for us to get all those results back, and then we have to analyze them to make sure that we've got them all in the right places. For example, since we're testing all of our campuses, sometimes some of the Bloomington results might get to IU East or vice versa. We've got to sort all that out.
White said Vault Medical is responsible for processing and reporting IU COVID-19 mitigation test results to the state. At the September 14th meeting of the Ellisville Town Council, Town Manager Mike Farmer said utility shutoffs would begin on September 17th.
We are allowing up to 12 months for payments of large sums of debt. Anything over $240 will allow for 12 months, and anything under will allow 6-month payments. And we're pretty flexible about that as well. We're trying to take a real soft approach to easing our way back into compliance and payment as opposed to shutoffs.
Farmer said 24 residents agreed to a payment plan and that 260 people have not paid their current cycle utilities bills. During the September 14th Bloomington Plan Commission meeting, City Planner Eric Grulich presented a rezone request for an East Brownstone Drive property.
Is the comprehensive plan that was just recently adopted did highlight the need to locate student housing outside of the downtown. So just to the north of this site, along 17th Street, there is the Evolve project that was approved for student housing. And then not too long ago, earlier this year, there was an approval for the Motel 6 redevelopment that allowed for student housing. So there are two projects that have kind of come forward in the near vicinity of this for student housing. But this site is currently being used for predominantly that use. It is multifamily, it is student oriented. Dunn Street runs along the east side of this site that is extremely close to the IU Stadium where the bus station is.
Grulich said the project would include 3 multi-story buildings, the tallest being 6 stories. He mentioned plans for an internal parking garage and 3 drive cuts onto 14th Street. Aaron Stange of Landmark Properties spoke about the development advantages.
Our projects have several advantages for the community that we develop in, including relocating existing renters out of single-family homes, which often improves community relations, and by significantly increasing tax contributions via the redevelopment of often underutilized or blighted sites.
Community member Greg Alexander voiced concerns over constant sidewalk obstruction by vegetation.
to get to campus, you have to cross the railroad tracks. And for some reason, we haven't been able to get the railroad to maintain vegetation that hangs on the sidewalks. So like 13th Street, where it runs parallel to the railroad track, vegetation is always obstructing that sidewalk. Indiana Avenue, where it goes under the railroad tracks, there's always vegetation hanging over those retaining walls blocking the sidewalk. Walnut, where it goes under the railroad tracks, there's always vegetation hanging down blocking the sidewalk. And the city is unwilling to do anything about it. The railroad is unwilling to do anything about it. And I almost say we should just not build any student housing north of the railroad tracks until we figure out how to maintain a pedestrian crossing across the railroad tracks, because there's not a single one in the whole city that's even remotely clear most of the time. The one that I live on Madison Street, it's blocked again. Believe it or not, they only clear the vegetation once every summer.
Ultimately, the Plan Commission continued the request to their October 12th meeting. The Bloomington Utility Service Board discussed an agreement with Wood Environmental and Infrastructure Solutions for a stormwater master plan during their September 14th meeting. City MS4 coordinator Kelsey Thetonia said the project would be split into phases.
So the project is going to be split into different phases, so mainly being 3 phases. The first for a program assessment across all city departments and within CBU. That'll have to do with MS4 compliance, all of our procedures and our ordinances to get some more information on that. And then we're going to go into the planning process where we involve a city staff focus group, stakeholder groups, and get input from everyone involved with stormwater management, basically. Go into the planning process, and that will be basically the first 2 phases will be the first year of the project. And that will cost just under $70,000 for the creation of the plan itself and the program assessment.
Utilities Director Vic Kelson said the city had never before obtained a stormwater master plan.
The city wishes to move in the direction of developing greener stormwater infrastructure than we have in the past. We have to do that, it's going to take a number of capital projects. Stormwater efforts that we do dovetail with all the other departments in the city, especially Public Works and Planning and Transportation. So the idea of a stormwater master plan really sets out what it is we as a city are intending to do in terms of managing and improving the quality of stormwater runoff leaving the city.
Project manager Heather Williams clarified that any problems that arise from the plan would be worked through with assistance of Wood Environmental. She said that years of inventory would assist with the city planning strategies.
Another concrete example is a lot of cities don't have green infrastructure typical details, so they don't have how contractors are going to construct BMPs. And in the plan, we'll call out that, hey, the city of Bloomington might need some green infrastructure typical details. The implementation will actually go ahead and create those physical typical details in the construction document for you. And so it's just, the planning process always takes about a year, and we work with all the different city departments to see what those needs are. And then, like I said, I've been doing this for 15 to 20 years. So we have a library of engineering standards and details to help you create. And that, again, is just one concrete example to help you understand like what the plan is versus what the implementation is.
The board unanimously approved the agreement. And we'll have more from CATSweek right after this.
Do you know that thousands of children go without school supplies every day? Teachers Warehouse is a 100% volunteer-powered organization. We service the educational and creative needs of students in Monroe, Brown, Greene, Lawrence, and Owen counties by distributing school supplies free to the teachers. Teachers Warehouse is composed of 7 rooms filled with books, pencils, paper, and even tools to motivate students. If it's in a classroom, we'll supply it. To donate new or gently used school supplies or volunteer, give us a call at 812-929-7522 or email us at contact@teacherswarehouse.net.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Monroe County Council discussed the 2021 County Council General Budget during their September 15th meeting. Budget Administrator Kim Schell said a part-time hourly position was added to the budget.
The auditor's office has asked that we take over the part-time hourly person that is typing the verbatim minutes for the council. Currently, that person is working 28 hours a week. So that amount would cost $27,664 plus the FICA. I budgeted for 25 hours for 24,700. That being because beginning in January, Megan, our council assistant who works, who is paid by the auditor's office, will begin taking over the summary council minutes.
Scheel also mentioned an increase in the budget for a contract with Wagner, Irwin, Scheel and Associates, or WIS, for job salary studies. Councilmember Jeff McKim questions if more funds would be needed to compensate the WIS study.
No, I just want to make sure that having the appropriation in 2021 for WIS will be adequate, or if we think we're going to have to do an additional yet this year to make those payments.
I have not received anything from WIS with regards to payment. I do know that I will be encumbering some from this year, at least 3,000 in contractual. So that will give us, 103. But I can check with them.
Scheel said a final bill has not been received. Councilmember Marty Hawk said WIS would not be necessary to research the salaries of elected officials. Councilmember Eric Spoonmore said only a small cost would be incurred for that service.
I don't know if we had them kind of parse that out, the amounts, versus the employees and the classification versus the elected officials' compensation. But we could ask them, how much do you intend of this 98,000 to be devoted to the elected official analysis? My hunch is that would be a very small sliver of the total cost.
The County Council approved the 2021 General Fund budget for approximately $561,500, with Hawk voting against. The Monroe County Plan Commission discussed a plat vacation request, overhead utility waiver, sidewalk waiver, and right-of-way waiver for an approximately 4-acre parcel on North Maple Grove Road during the September 15th meeting. County Planner Tammy Berman said one structure on the property is historical.
We are not sure why this lot was combined to allow for 2 houses on the same lot. There's a 2,300 square foot house built in 1993. And the other one is a 616 square foot home that is on the, it's locally designated as a contributing historic structure. And I don't know if it was the small size or how this was combined, but at the current moment, we consider this a non-conforming lot, which creates some other problems even outside of the planning and zoning realm, which is why the petitioner is here to try to do this 2-lot subdivision to allow each home residents to be on a separate lot.
Commissioner Jeff McKim questioned the need to designate a home as a pre-existing non-conforming structure. Berman said the designation would inform buyers of expansion limitations and that the 1993 home has buried utility wires. She requested the council not support the overhead utilities request.
There's a couple of reasons. One was that just looking at the tree that it was going through and it was leaning on the wire itself, that seemed like a bit of a safety issue. There's a gap in the limestone walls right there. So it's not like, they can't get the underground utility to the structure. And lot 1 to the south is already buried underground. And then finally, this is a historic district, and whether that utility pole detracts or adds to that character of the area. It was something I kind of thought of that possibly that would be a reason to also think about putting it underground.
Petitioner Kim Schur said the cost to bury utilities would be significant and mentioned the potential for burying wires during future renovation. Commissioner Julie Thomas asked Berman about providing the petitioners with leniency on the timing of a utilities burial.
This preliminary plat is good for 2 years. So they have 2 years to come back and possibly then ask for an additional extension of another 2 years. So there's that 4-year window where they could, hook onto sewer, which is required before final platting, and make any of the site improvements and meet those conditions that are voted on today before final platting. So there's 2 to 4 years to work with in this case.
The Plan Commission approved all of the requests with the condition that any new structures have buried utilities. During their September 15th meeting, the Bloomington Board of Public Works approved an agreement with Republic Services for municipal solid waste disposal and single-source recycling. Public Works Director Adam Wason described the agreement.
What this does is this would lock us in with a rate that at no more than $27.19 for single stream recycling processing for 2022 and 2023. Again, the reason this came to the board is there is an expected 3% increase to our current rate for recycling process that would go into effect in 2022. So that's why we need the board to hear this new contract renewal.
Board member Kyla Cox-Deckard said contaminated recycling is costly to the city. Wason said recycling must be clean and dry.
And the other part too is as you alluded to, it's kind of that wish recycling, that wish cycling. I wish this was recyclable. Styrofoam no longer recyclable, plastic bags no longer recyclable, and that's why we had to do the change to the graphic on the lids of the carts. If I looked back 3 years ago when we changed over the program, I don't think we would have ever put a graphic on it that said, here's what's acceptable and here's what's not. Because that's changed so much, and not so much, but any change is then inaccurate information on the carts. So we're all, that's the other part of this as well.
The Bloomington Board of Public Safety discussed the 21st Century Policing Report during their September 16th meeting. Police Captain Scott Oldham reported on the 4th pillar of community policing and crime reduction. He mentioned programs utilized by the police instead of conducting arrests.
I think the chief summarized earlier the STRIDE program, which is new. It's yet but another option for the officers to put people into treatment as opposed to actually incarcerating them. But even instead, we've moved in a lot of our misdemeanor arrests are done via citation at this point in time rather than actually incarcerating folks. So you'll see our numbers for physical arrests go down. The numbers for the arrests fluctuate month to month, as you've seen, but a lot of those numbers you're seeing are still arrests by citation, so the people are not actually physically incarcerated.
Oldham described a partnership with neighborhood residents to promote community policing and co-produce public safety. He said officers have worked with neighborhoods for over 15 years.
Again, you've seen that time and time again from us where we're having neighborhood resource specialists. We have officers go to neighborhood meetings. We have a sergeant assigned to the neighborhood watch program. So it's something we've been doing for at least 15 years, although the neighborhood resource specialists are new. They are a continued outgrowth of that effort and going forward.
Board member Rafi Hansen questioned what interrelated goals officers share with the neighborhoods. He said the community and the police must work toward a common goal.
It will become necessary to take this particular pillar and think of the goals that you have to establish with the community as kind of a cornerstone or a linchpin. So until that actually happens, that symbiotic relationship happens, I will not be satisfied that we're meeting the pillars that are relative to these goals. And again, Scott, I know that you mentioned that, hey, when it comes to building bridges with, certain communities, that will require more work from the public. And that's something that I think, I would feel very comfortable having a discussion, with the mayor and our elected officials about. But when we look at these things, it's more than just where the police are present, but saying, hey, you know what? We're noticing violent crime in this particular community. So, per the goal that we're looking at, residents, the businesses, community groups, and so forth in that area, what is it that we can agree upon?
Oldham described COVID-19's interference with community engagement. He said many youth programs were cancelled. He said, however, officers had many opportunities for virtual outreach. And we'll have more from CATSweek after these messages.
With Girls Inc. in her corner, every girl can be healthy, confident, and resilient. She'll do more than dream about her potential. She'll reach it.
With you in my corner. With you in my corner, I will not be another statistic. I will fight for myself. For my future. With you in my corner, I will win.
Fuel her fire and she will change the world. Girls Inc. Inspiring all girls to be strong, smart, and bold.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Monroe County Commissioners held a public hearing in regard to adding Benton Township to the Monroe County Fire Protection District. Benton Township trustee Michelle Bright spoke during their September 16th meeting.
It was around 7 years ago when we realized as a township that we could not continue our method of providing fire service for the long term. It was during contract negotiations for our backup fire service that we were informed that the cost of this contract was going to increase dramatically over the next several years because the amount we were paying only covered a small portion of the actual expense it cost, and it wasn't fair to the other townships to subsidize our service. It was a bit of a shock to me at the time. Being a former volunteer firefighter and a nurse, it was important to me to ensure our community has full-time fire and emergency services when they need it. And it's not just about house fires. Our volunteer fire department also responds to medical calls, car accidents, flooded roads, downed power lines, brush fires, and hazardous materials incidents.
Bright said she was afraid a firefighter would not be available to respond to a call. She said Benton Township only had enough resources to provide emergency services about half the time.
In 2017, we hired an emergency service advisor who, after weeks of interviews, handed us a 98-page report and told us basically what we already knew. In order to provide full-time fire and emergency services, we needed to consolidate with another unit, preferably the Monroe Fire District. But that was not possible at the time since we were not contiguous with another unit.
Bright said in late 2019, the Monroe County Fire Protection District Board of Trustees accepted Benton Township into their district. Fire Chief Charlie Powers said that merging is the best way to provide emergency services. Bright disclosed that the addition would cause a tax increase.
We've been very humbled by the overwhelmingly positive response, but recognize that the issue is not a clear win because it will involve a slight increase in taxes, which is hard to do at any time, but especially in the middle of a pandemic. I genuinely hope that people reach out to the township if this is a hardship for them.
The commissioners approved the merger, which will take effect on January 1st, 2022. The Monroe County Public Library Board of Trustees discussed plans for a third library branch during their September 16th meeting. Director Marilyn Wood said the branch would be located next to Batchelor Middle School. She presented a feasibility study.
The land that we identified, Christine Matthew, our consultants, Bledsoe, Rigger, Cooper, James, who are civil engineers, and Blundell Associates, cost consultants, have studied the building and the site. And then through exploration of numerous design strategies, we've penned down a couple of favorable building and design options and their associated costs. And the cost was the last missing link in this until this week.
Wood said a 21,000 square foot single level building with an $11 million budget was the first design option. Wood said community members expressed concern about forest preservation.
We also know that the Monroe County community has expressed a desire to keep the wooded area, the forest, and the library sees that a majority of these trees are an asset to the location. There are invasive Bradford pear species in that forest, and we know and we are engaging a forester to take a look at the health of the property, because should we site a building that close to the forest, we want to know there aren't any dangers in that, and also just to make the forest a greater asset to the community by ensuring that its health is good.
Wood presented the second design option with a covered parking garage. She said covering parking would save snow removal costs, produce fewer parking spots, and could preserve more trees.
But there's less surface parking because we've gained that parking underneath in the garage, and it takes advantage of the topography. So we essentially drive into the hillside that's there. So we're tucking a garage under the main building.
The Board of Trustees will hold a special session at a later date to finalize the site plans. The Bloomington City Council took a final vote on a 0.25% local income tax increase during their September 16th meeting. Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton said the suggested allocations of tax revenue were possibilities and not predetermined expenditures.
As your mayor, I guess I try to kind of strike a balance, because I think if I had come with a proposal that was incredibly detailed, program level down to everything that I thought I would recommend as the right thing to do, on the one hand, I wouldn't want to do that without a lot more input about what are the right exact approaches that we want to take. On the other hand, if I came with no suggestions of what the kinds of programs that we ought to invest in were, I think legitimately people would be pretty unclear about what is the purpose of this.
Community member Randy Paul said the increase could be detrimental to low-income families.
We went from living on a six-figure income to suddenly, because of my health, dropped almost zero in the course of about 7 months. It was before the Affordable Care Act. All my conditions were pre-existing. No insurance was paid. My pharmacy bill alone was $4,000 every single month. And it didn't take long for us just to be completely wiped out. The most painful memory during that time that I have is when I had to take my 3-year-old daughter to the doctor. She was burning up with a 102 temperature, and I sat in the waiting room for about an hour before they told me that she could not be treated because we had a past due balance of $35.
Paul said $25 can be a huge deal to families. Bloomington Chamber of Commerce President Aaron Predmore said 91% of respondents to a local survey did not want the tax increase. Councilmember Sue Scambilleri said the use of funds was unclear.
And while it does point to the three broad themes we talked about, it isn't talking about a clear, coherent set of priorities. It's talked about an eclectic set of initiatives ranging from down payment assistance on housing to undefined support for life sciences jobs to planting and pruning urban trees. And it isn't based, and this is maybe what I'm most concerned about, it isn't based on substantial public engagement or on truly collaborative discussions with our colleagues in county government, with whom we already have a strained relationship in many ways.
The council voted down the increase in a 5-4 vote. Councillors Dave Rollo, Ron Smith, Isabel Piedmont Smith, and Susan Sandberg voted against. And that's all from CATSweek. Thanks for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Martin O'Neill.